The steam from the shower was still clinging to the air, thick and warm. A single drop of water traced a path down her pale neck, disappearing into the white terry cloth of her towel. I swear I didn't mean to, but when I pushed open the door, that's the sight that made the blood in my veins freeze solid. Her, Sophia Knight, 23 years old, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar empire, and an infamous ice queen. But right now, she just looked like a startled fawn, her wide, innocent eyes locked on me in pure terror. The towel, however, told a different story. It barely contained a bombshell figure that was completely at odds with her cherubic face, its damp fabric clinging to curves that could stop a man's heart. The air went still. The only sound was the frantic drumming of our own heartbeats, each one louder than the last. I knew, right then, that I was in deep trouble, and that our story from this exact moment had just spun completely out of control. Bang! Okay, maybe I pushed the door open a little too hard. My first impression was a wall of white steam. It smelled incredible, like some expensive floral shampoo mixed with humid air, and it rushed straight into my lungs. Then came a short, sharp gasp. A figure materialized out of the mist. My breath hitched in my throat. A woman who had just stepped out of the shower. She was wrapped in nothing but a single white towel, her dark hair sopping wet and dripping onto her shoulders. I watched one droplet trace a path down the elegant column of her neck, glide over a delicate collarbone, and vanish into the deep valley hinted at by the edge of the towel. Her face was flawless, fresh scrubbed like a college student cramming for finals. Her eyes were huge and round, and right now they were wide with a mixture of disbelief and mortified fury. But the body beneath that towel was a whole other narrative. The terry cloth covered the essentials, but in doing so, it only emphasized the shocking fullness of her chest, the impossible narrowness of her waist, and the long, straight line of her legs, which were flushed a tempting pink from the steam. The face of an angel, the body of a... The thought flashed through my mind, and I felt my Adam's apple bob as I swallowed hard. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear my own heart, a frantic hammering against my ribs. I could see the rapid rise and fall of her chest, though I couldn't tell if it was from anger or fear. Her voice was a trembling whisper, like she'd just been pulled from an icy lake. My brain finally kicked back into gear. I spun around so fast that my back slammed into the doorframe with a painful thud. I'm sorry. I swear I'm not a pervert. The butler told me to come upstairs. I thought this was a guest room. The explanation sounded pathetic and flimsy even to my own ears. Behind me, the silence stretched, heavier than before. I could practically feel the murderous glare she was burning into my back. Get out. Finally, a shriek, strangled with so much rage it sounded like a shard of ice, shattered the awkward, charged atmosphere. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I practically scrambled out of the room, fumbling to pull the door shut behind me with some pathetic attempt at politeness. Leaning against the cool hallway wall, I let out a long, slow breath. So this was her. This was the sister my best friend, my brother-in-arms, had died to protect. The legendary Sophia Knight, the Ice Queen CEO who'd taken control of a billion-dollar company with an iron fist, a woman who made Wall Street sharks tremble. This was one hell of a first impression. I glanced down at my own outfit, faded old military surplus camo pants, and a pair of flip-flops. A bitter smile touched my lips. No wonder she thought I was some kind of creep. A few minutes later, the door clicked open. Sophia had changed into a set of silk pajamas. Her long hair was twisted into a messy bun at the back of her head, revealing a small face that was still locked in a frosty expression, though the corners of her eyes were still tinged with red. She looked down her nose at me, her eyes filled with suspicion and disgust. Who are you? And who let you in my house? Her voice was cold, like a frozen lake in the dead of winter, completely devoid of emotion. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a creased, worn envelope, holding it out to her. Kevin Knight, I said. He was my brother. At the mention of that name, a flicker of something finally broke through her icy composure. She reached out with slender fingers, the tips trembling slightly as she took the letter. I had pulled it from Kevin's pocket on a dusty battlefield half a world away. He'd been covered in his own blood, and his last words to me were a choked whisper. Ethan, take care of my sister for me. Sophia opened the letter slowly. I could see her eyes turning red, her composure cracking with every word she read. The letter wasn't long. When she finally looked up at me again, the hostility in her eyes was gone. In its place was a complex storm of emotions: grief, wariness, and a sliver of helplessness. "My brother. What did he tell you?" "Everything," I said, keeping it simple. "He said you needed a bodyguard." Sophia fell silent, her knuckles turning white as she clutched the letter. After a long moment, she took a deep breath, as if she'd just made a difficult decision. "Alfred, the butler downstairs, will show you to a room. From now on, you're my personal security. My assistant will contact you tomorrow to discuss your contract and salary." She turned to go back into her room. "Wait," I said. She paused, turning back with a slight frown, clearly annoyed at the interruption. "Your security detail starts now," I said, nodding towards her open door. "Sleeping with your door unlocked is a bad habit, especially in this house." My words were loaded, and she knew it. Before I came here, I'd done my homework. Knight Industries was a snake pit of corporate backstabbers, and plenty of them wanted her chair. For a young woman like her to hold on to the CEO position meant she was surrounded by enemies I couldn't even see yet. Sophia's expression shifted. She understood exactly what I was saying. She didn't say anything else, just gave me one last, long look before shutting the door with a solid thump. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I rubbed my nose. Looks like Ms. CEO was smarter than I gave her credit for. The butler, Alfred, was a kind-looking man in his late 50s. He respectfully led me to a guest room on the first floor. The place was huge, 100 times more luxurious than any barracks I'd ever slept in. "Mr. Hayes, please let me know if you require anything at all," Alfred said with a polite nod. "Thanks, Alfred," I replied. After a hot shower, I changed into a clean set of clothes and stretched out on the ridiculously soft king-size bed, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept replaying that steamy scene in the bathroom, followed by Kevin's dying request. "Don't worry, brother," I thought. "As long as I'm breathing, nobody will lay a single finger on your sister." The next morning, I was finishing up my workout routine in the backyard when a ridiculously loud, cherry-red Ferrari drifted into the driveway and screeched to a halt in front of the mansion. A young guy in a silk Hawaiian shirt and too much hair gel climbed out, holding a massive, tacky bouquet of dyed blue roses. He spotted me in the yard, and his face twisted into a sneer as he looked me up and down. "Hey, you, the new gardener. Open the gate. Can't you see I'm here?" I paused, wiping the sweat from my brow with a towel, and met his gaze without a word. My silence seemed to piss him off. He raised his voice. "What are you looking at? You're the help. You think you can stare me down? You want me to have Sophia fire you right now?" I just watched him, letting him perform. I'd seen a million guys like him overseas, spoiled brats who thought their daddy's money made them kings of the world. "Caleb," a cool voice cut through the air from the front door. Sophia emerged, dressed in a sharp professional skirt suit. Her hair was pulled back, revealing a clear forehead and that same baby face, now etched with annoyance. "Sophia, baby, there you are." The guy, Caleb, instantly switched gears, his face melting into a greasy, fawning smile. He practically skipped over to her, thrusting the bouquet forward. "For you, 999 blue roses, to represent my eternal love." Sophia didn't even glance at the flowers. Her eyes went right past him and landed on me. "Ethan, this is a guest of mine. If he comes by in the future, just let him in." Her tone was flat. I couldn't tell if it was an order or just a statement of fact. "Sophia, who is this hillbilly?" Caleb demanded, pointing at me. "Where did you find this piece of trash? He's an eyesore. Get rid of him." "He's not trash," Sophia said, her brow furrowing deeper. "He's a friend of my brother's. And now he's my bodyguard." "Bodyguard?" Caleb let out an exaggerated laugh, like it was the funniest joke he'd ever heard. He strutted over to me and poked me in the chest with the bouquet. "Him? He's dressed like a day laborer. Who's he going to protect?" "Sophia, don't let this guy fool you. If you want a security team, I can get you a squad of ex-Special Forces guys. I guarantee they'll be 100 times better than this clown." His voice was dripping with contempt. Sophia's face went cold as ice. "Caleb, he works for me. It's not your place to question my decisions." Caleb choked on his words, his face flushing red. He didn't dare yell at Sophia, so he directed all his frustration at me. He suddenly reached out, trying to grab her wrist. Sophia, don't be mad. I'm just trying to look out for you. Sophia instinctively pulled back, a flash of disgust on her face. But Caleb's hand kept coming. Just as his grimy fingers were about to touch her skin, another hand shot out of nowhere, clamping down on his wrist like a vice. My hand. Arg! Caleb let out a squeal like a stuck pig, his face contorting in pain. Let go! You son of a bitch! Let go! It hurts! I stared at him, my face a mask of indifference, and squeezed harder. I could hear the faint crackling sound of the small bones in his wrist grinding together. My client, I said, my voice low and steady, doesn't like to be touched. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried a chill that seemed to freeze the scream in Caleb's throat. He stared at me with wide, terrified eyes, as if he were looking at the devil himself. Sophia was frozen too. She just stared at my broad back, her eyes filled with shock. She never would have guessed that this quiet, unassuming man could be so ruthlessly efficient, so utterly intimidating. Some people just don't understand the meaning of respect until you break their bones. Let go. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Caleb finally broke, his voice cracking as he begged. A cold smirk touched my lips. With a flick of my wrist, I tossed him aside. Caleb landed in a pathetic heap on the manicured lawn. The blue roses scattered everywhere, crushed beneath him. Before peeling out, he shot me one last hateful glare. You just wait. I'm not done with you. I didn't even bother to look at him. I'd heard threats from bigger and badder men than him more times than I could count. Silence returned to the front of the mansion. Sophia was staring at me, her expression complicated. Thank you, she said softly. Just doing my job, I replied flatly. There's a gala tonight. It's important. You're coming with me. She paused for a beat, then added, Where's something decent? With that, she turned and walked back into the house. I watched her go, a small smile playing on my lips. Maybe this ice queen wasn't so impossible to melt after all. Night fell, and the city lights began to glitter. Inside the penthouse ballroom of a five-star hotel, champagne flowed, and beautiful people mingled under crystal chandeliers. Sophia was wearing a stunning black evening gown that hugged every curve, and under the brilliant lights, her innocent face was so beautiful it was almost hard to look at. The moment she walked in, every eye in the room was on her, and I was half a step behind her, a dutiful shadow in a tailored suit her assistant had bought for me that afternoon. I could feel the curious and jealous stares, everyone wondering who I was. Ms. Knight, you look absolutely radiant this evening. A balding man with a greasy smile and a flute of champagne approached her. Mr. Davis, you're too kind, Sophia replied with a practiced, corporate smile, raising her glass. Sophia, a toast to your success. Ms. Knight, about that proposal our company sent over. A steady stream of people came to schmooze and toast her. Sophia handled it all like a pro, but I could see the fatigue creeping into the corners of her eyes. Just then, a jarring voice cut through the pleasantries. Well, if it isn't the great Sophia Knight. Got yourself a new boy toy for the evening. My eyes flickered up. It was Caleb Vance, the same punk who'd fled the mansion this morning. He was wearing a white tuxedo, a bandage wrapped around his wrist, and a nasty sneer on his face. Standing next to him was a pot-bellied older man who had to be his father, Richard Vance, the chairman of Vance Global. Caleb, you're not welcome here, Sophia said, her face instantly turning to ice. Oh, come on, Sophia, Caleb whined, sidling closer. My dad is hosting this party. Of course I'm here. Besides, I came to apologize. He picked up a glass of whiskey, filled to the brim. I was out of line today. I'll punish myself. He downed the entire glass in one go, then poured another and held it out to Sophia. Sophia, you have to drink this one. If you don't, you're disrespecting me. And you're disrespecting my father. His tone was laced with menace. Everyone around us turned to watch the show. Sophia couldn't hold her liquor. I'd learned that from Alfred. One glass of that whiskey, and she'd be on the floor. Her face paled. She knew Caleb was backing her into a corner. Just as she was trying to figure a way out, I stepped forward, positioning myself between her and Caleb. I took the glass from his hand and looked him dead in the eye. Ms. Knight isn't feeling well, I said calmly. I'll drink this for her. Who the hell do you think you are? Caleb scoffed. You think you're worthy of drinking for Sophia? I ignored him and tossed back the whiskey. The fiery liquid burned its way down my throat, but my expression didn't change. One glass isn't much of an apology. I reached over to a nearby table, picked up an unopened bottle of Macallan 18, and popped the cork off with my teeth. Then I put the bottle to my lips and started chugging. The entire ballroom went silent. Every single person was staring at me like I was some kind of circus freak. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, her beautiful eyes wide with utter disbelief. Caleb's smirk was frozen on his face. He just stood there, dumbfounded as I polished off the entire bottle without stopping. When I was finished, I casually dropped the empty bottle onto the floor, where it shattered with a loud crash. I let out a whiskey-soaked belch right in Caleb's face and gave him a cold, hard smile. Is that enough for you now? Caleb's face cycled through shades of red and white. He pointed a trembling finger at me, sputtering, unable to form a single word. You. Beside him, Richard Vance's face was dark enough to curdle milk. In front of all these people, I hadn't just called their bluff. I'd curb-stomped their family's pride into the expensive carpet. Good. Very good, Richard Vance said, his voice tight with fury. You got guts, kid. Let's see how tough you really are. He gave a subtle nod, and several large men in black suits began to close in around us. The atmosphere in the ballroom crackled with tension. The other guests backed away, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. Sophia's face went white. She grabbed my arm, her palm ice-cold and slick with sweat. Don't be afraid, I murmured, patting her hand. My voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that seemed to calm her instantly. I took another step forward, shielding her behind me, and swept my gaze over the approaching security guards. You want to do this? I said softly. Think it through. These guys were pros, tough guys who had seen their share of violence. But as they met my eyes, every single one of them hesitated. They saw something in my gaze that made their blood run cold. They saw the look of a killer, the kind of look you only get from wading through mountains of bodies and rivers of blood. Useless bastards. Get him. Break his legs. Caleb shrieked from the sidelines. Just then, a sharp voice cut through the tension. Freeze! What's going on here? The crowd parted to let a woman in a police uniform through. She was tall and stunningly attractive, with a short, no-nonsense haircut and eyes as sharp as a hawk's. Two uniformed officers followed behind her. The police. What happened? Why are the cops here? A nervous murmur rippled through the crowd. The female officer's eyes scanned the room, finally landing on me. Her brow furrowed. We got a call about a public disturbance. Is that you? Before I could answer, Caleb started pointing at me, playing the victim. Officer, it's him. He assaulted us. He threatened us. Arrest him. The officer looked me over, her gaze sharp and analytical. I just held up my hands. I just drank a bottle of whiskey, I said innocently. Didn't touch a soul. Caleb started to argue. Quiet, the officer snapped, shutting him down. She turned her attention back to me. You're coming with me down to the station to give a statement. I shrugged. Whatever. But Sophia panicked. You didn't do anything. They started it. The officer gave Sophia a professional, unblinking look. We'll sort out who started what at the station. Right now, I need you all to cooperate. She moved to put me in cuffs. I frowned and sidestepped her easily. I can walk on my own. With Sophia watching with worried eyes and Caleb smirking in triumph, I followed the fiery detective out of the ballroom. In the parking garage, just as I was about to get into the patrol car, I felt a rush of air behind me. It was Richard Vance's goons. They weren't going to let me go that easily. They were trying to get in a cheap shot while the cops were distracted. A smirk touched my lips. Without even turning around, I threw a vicious back kick. Thwack! The first guy flew backward like a sack of garbage, slamming into the side of a parked car with a sickening crunch. The rest of them froze in their tracks, their eyes wide with shock. Assaulting an officer? You dare resist arrest? The female detective was fast. In a split second, she had her service weapon drawn, the black muzzle aimed squarely at my forehead. I slowly turned to face her, not a trace of fear on my face. Detective, if you look closely, I said calmly, you'll see that was self-defense. The detective's name was Ava Reed, and she was the captain of the city's major crimes unit. She held her gun with a steady hand, her eyes like daggers locked on mine. Hands on your head. Get on the ground. Her voice was crisp and cold. I raised my hands but remained standing. Captain Reed, I suggest you check the security footage, I said evenly. They came to me first. If you arrest me right now, it's not going to look good for the department's reputation. Ava's frown deepened. She knew I was right, but the fact that I had so easily taken down one of her assailants and was now calmly negotiating with her at gunpoint was clearly rubbing her the wrong way. This guy was too arrogant. As we stood there in a standoff, Sophia came running up, the clicks of her high heels echoing in the garage. Captain Reed, put the gun down. My lawyer is on his way. Her voice was laced with an authority that was impossible to ignore. Ava looked at Sophia, then back at me. Finally, with a frustrated sigh, she slowly lowered her weapon. Fine as night. I'll give you that professional courtesy, she said, holstering her gun. Then she glared at me. But you're still coming to the station for questioning. Half an hour later, I was in an interrogation room at the city precinct. A harsh fluorescent light beat down from overhead. I was leaning back in my chair, perfectly relaxed, while a very frosty-looking Ava Reed sat across from me. Name: Ethan Hayes. Age: 28. Occupation: bodyguard. Ava slammed her notepad down on the table with a loud smack. She leaned forward, her eyes boring into me. Listen to me, Hayes. I suggest you start telling the truth. Who are you, really? A man with your skills is no ordinary bodyguard. And why are you working for Sophia Knight? I let a small smile play on my lips. Captain, is this an interrogation, or are you just trying to fill out a census form? Who I am has nothing to do with this case. You. Ava's chest heaved with frustration. She'd been a cop for years, interrogated hundreds of criminals, and she'd never met anyone so infuriatingly calm. Just then, the door to the interrogation room opened. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit and gold-rimmed glasses walked in, followed by a concerned-looking Sophia. Captain Reed, I'm Arthur Finch. I'm representing Mr. Hayes, the man said, handing her a business card. My client was acting in self-defense, and he has cooperated fully with your investigation. You have no legal grounds to continue detaining him. Ava glanced at the card, and her expression soured even more. Arthur Finch was the most ruthless and successful corporate lawyer in the city. Mr. Finch, this is just a routine inquiry. And the inquiry is over, Arthur said, his tone firm. Unless you have concrete evidence that my client has committed a crime, we are leaving. Now, Ava clenched her jaw, but in the end, she had no choice but to wave us away with a look of pure disgust. Outside the station, the cool night air felt good on my skin. Sophia was waiting by her car. The moment she saw me, she rushed over, her eyes filled with genuine concern. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said, shaking my head. Get in. The ride back to the mansion was silent. I could see Sophia wanting to say something, but she kept stopping herself. As we pulled into the driveway, she finally broke. Ethan, who are you? Really? Her voice was quiet, a tentative probe into the mystery I presented. I stared out the window at the passing city lights. I'm someone your brother trusted, I said softly. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but she was smart enough not to push it. Everyone has their secrets. She understood that. But as she glanced at my calm profile, I knew a storm of questions was raging inside her. This man was a complete enigma, an impenetrable fog. But there was something about him, a powerful, reassuring presence that, like a magnet, she found herself inexplicably drawn to. The next day, I was in the garden, trying to save a few orchids that Sophia was systematically killing with kindness, when Alfred came rushing out. Mr. Hayes, trouble. Ms. Zoe is here. Ms. Zoe, as in Zoe Lane, Sophia's one and only best friend, and currently the biggest movie star in the country. Before I could even process that, I was hit by a wave of expensive perfume. A woman in a slinky sundress and oversized sunglasses stormed into the garden like a hurricane. She whipped off the sunglasses, revealing a face so beautiful it was practically a weapon. Sophia, my darling, I heard some little punk was giving you trouble yesterday. Who is it? Tell your big sister, and I'll have him disappeared. Zoe's voice echoed through the property before she even reached the house. She swept the descending Sophia into a dramatic hug, nuzzling her cheek. Sophia gently pushed her away. I'm fine, Zoe. And keep your voice down. You're going to wake the neighbors. Zoe's eyes scanned the area, and then, like a predator spotting its prey, they locked onto me. She sauntered over, her hips swaying, and playfully hooked a finger with a perfectly manicured red nail under my chin. Well, hello. Is this the new bodyguard? He's not bad to look at. Her touch was cool and deliberately provocative. I frowned and tilted my head away. Ma'am, please. Ooh, feisty. She just laughed, clearly amused. I like that. What's your name, handsome? Got a girlfriend? Mind if I apply for the position? As she spoke, she leaned in, giving me an eyeful of her impressive cleavage, her eyes sparkling with mischief. My face remained impassive, but inside I was wondering what kind of friend Sophia kept. One was an iceberg, the other was a volcano. Zoe. Sophia finally had enough. She marched over and pulled Zoe away from me, a flicker of irritation on her face that she probably didn't even realize was there. Stop it. He's a friend of my brother's. A friend of your brother's? Zoe's eyes went wide, and then her smile turned even more suggestive. Oh, I get it. Not the hired muscle, the boy toy. What are you talking about? Sophia's face instantly flushed crimson, like a cat whose tail had just been stepped on. Look, she's blushing. Zoe pointed at Sophia, then winked at me. Listen, handsome, our Sophia is a sweet, innocent little lamb. You'd better be good to her. Of course, if you find her a little too vanilla, you can always come find me. I'm way more fun. She blew me a kiss. I looked at the two of them, one flustered and furious, the other shamelessly teasing, both impossibly beautiful, and felt a headache coming on. Sophia shot Zoe a death glare and started dragging her toward the house. You're coming upstairs with me right now. We have things to discuss. As she passed me, Sophia hesitated for a fraction of a second, her eyes meeting mine with a look that was part apology, part unreadable embarrassment. I rubbed my nose. This bodyguard gig was turning out to be more complicated than I thought. It wasn't just about protecting her from corporate sharks. I had to fend off the domestic ones, too. That evening, Sophia was buried in work, dealing with an emergency at the company. She was still in her home office late into the night. I made her a glass of hot milk and knocked on the study door. She was frowning at a spreadsheet full of dense data, so focused she didn't even notice me come in. You should take a break, I said, placing the milk beside her keyboard. She finally looked up, her eyes bleary with exhaustion. Thank you. She took a small sip. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the soft clicking of the clock. Is the project a big one? I asked. She nodded, rubbing her temples. A major partnership deal. A competitor swooped in and stole it at the last minute. It's caused some cash flow problems. I didn't have to ask which competitor. It had Caleb and Richard Vance's fingerprints all over it. They couldn't humiliate her at the party, so they attacked her business instead. Classy. What can I do? I asked. Sophia looked at me, then gave a tired, bitter smile. This is business, Ethan. There's nothing you can do to help. In her world, I was just muscle. Good in a fight, but useless in a boardroom. I didn't argue. I just stood there quietly behind her chair. After a few more minutes, she leaned back and closed her eyes, completely worn out. I reached out, my hands hovering just inches from her temples. I focused, letting a gentle, steady energy flow from my fingertips. It was a pressure point technique I'd learned in the Rangers, designed to relieve combat fatigue and clear the mind. Sophia's body tensed for a second, but then, as the warmth spread, I saw the tight knot of her brow begin to smooth out. A wave of deep relief washed over her, as if all the stress and exhaustion were being drawn out by my touch. She didn't open her eyes. She just melted into the feeling, greedy for the moment of peace. I could smell the faint, clean scent of her shampoo and feel the comforting warmth radiating from my palms. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually her breathing deepened. She had fallen asleep, right there in her chair. I looked at her peaceful face. Without the icy mask she wore for the world, she looked younger, more vulnerable, like a child who needed protecting. Moving as quietly as I could, I scooped her up into my arms. She was lighter than I expected, soft and pliant, and she smelled just like she had in the bathroom that first day, that scent of flowers and warm steam. My heart skipped a beat. I carried her to her bedroom and gently laid her down, pulling the covers up over her. I was about to leave when she murmured something in her sleep. Kevin, don't go. I froze. A single tear escaped from the corner of her eye and slid down her temple. I felt a sharp pang in the deepest part of my chest. So, this is what it felt like. This uncontrollable panic that came with caring about someone. I sighed and pulled up the chair from her desk, settling in beside her bed. Don't worry, brother. From now on, I'll be her family. The next morning, Sophia woke up to find herself in her own bed, tucked neatly under the covers. She sat up with a jolt, checked her silk pajamas, and breathed a sigh of relief when she found them perfectly intact. Her memory of last night was fuzzy. She remembered falling asleep in the study, and then, did Ethan carry her to bed? The thought of being asleep in his arms sent a hot blush creeping up her cheeks. She went to the window and saw him in the yard below, a powerful, disciplined figure moving through his morning exercises. Her heart began to beat a little faster. Breakfast was awkward. Sophia couldn't meet my eyes. She just stared down at her oatmeal, taking tiny, precise bites. Last night, she finally began, unable to stand the silence. You were exhausted. I cut in gently. You fell asleep, so I carried you to your room. My straightforwardness only seemed to make her more flustered. Thank you, she mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. Just then my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I answered. Ethan Hayes. The cool, crisp voice of the female detective came through the line. This is Captain Reed. Captain, what can I do for you? Caleb Vance is missing, she said, her tone all business. He was last seen at the gala last night. We have witnesses who saw you get into a conflict with him. Right now, we have reason to believe his disappearance is connected to you. I frowned. Caleb was missing? After I left the station, I came straight back to the mansion. I hadn't gone anywhere. This was obviously a setup. I've been at the estate all night. Ms. Knight can vouch for me. A personal alibi isn't strong enough, Ava said. I need you to come down to the station immediately to cooperate with our investigation. And I do mean immediately. She hung up. Sophia had overheard the conversation, and her face grew dark. It's the Van Cess again, she said, her voice tight with anger. They're trying to frame you. Don't worry, I said, trying to reassure her as I grabbed my jacket. I haven't done anything wrong. I'll be back soon. I'm coming with you, Sophia said, standing up. No. I put a hand on her shoulder, gently pushing her back down. You have a company to run. Trust me, I can handle a little trouble like this. She looked into my eyes, and for some reason, she nodded. I drove to the station alone. On the way, I dialed a number from a burner phone. It's me. Spectre. Boss. It's been too long. The voice on the other end was practically vibrating with excitement. I need you to find someone. Caleb Vance, heir to Vance Global. He's disappeared, and someone's trying to pin it on me. I need to know who's behind it, and I need to know where Caleb is right now. Yes, sir. I'll have an answer for you in 10 minutes, tops. I hung up the phone, a cold smile on my face. You want to play dirty with me? I thought. Let's see who has the guts for it. I was back in the same interrogation room, under the same harsh light. Ava Reed sat across from me, her gaze even sharper than before. Ace, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you involved in Caleb Vance's disappearance? Captain, I don't like repeating myself, I said, leaning back and closing my eyes. You. She slammed her hand on the table. Don't think you can get away with stonewalling us. The security cameras in the hotel garage were conveniently malfunctioning, but a witness saw you assault Vance's bodyguards. We have reason to believe you held a grudge and retaliated against him. And your evidence? I opened my eyes and met her glare. You have nothing but speculation. Is that how you conduct your investigations? We'll find the evidence, she snarled. Just then my phone vibrated. A message. I glanced at the screen, and the corner of my mouth tilted up in a smile. Captain Reed, I said, looking at her calmly. I think you might want to send a team to the old West Point shipyards. You might find a surprise waiting for you. Ava stared at me, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the man you're looking for, I said, standing up. He might just be there. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a client to get back to. I walked out of the interrogation room without waiting for a reply. 2 uniforms moved to block my path, but I stopped them with a single look. Ava watched me go, her body trembling with rage. But in the end, she grabbed her radio. All units converge on the West Point shipyards. Now, I was back at the mansion in under half an hour. Sophia was pacing in the living room, a nervous wreck. She rushed over the second I walked in. What happened? Are you okay? I'm fine, I smiled, handing her a glass of water. Don't worry, this will all be over soon. And it was less than an hour later, the local news exploded. Heir to Vance Global arrested in connection with international smuggling ring. Caleb Vance apprehended by police during a deal gone wrong at the West Point shipyards. The news footage showed a pathetic-looking Caleb being shoved into a police car, surrounded by crates of contraband. Sophia stared at the TV, speechless. She turned to me, her eyes wide with disbelief. Did you do this? I just shrugged. It was simple, really. Caleb had faked his own kidnapping to frame me. But the criminal contact he'd hired to help him was one of my own men. I just turned his little play against him and handed him to the police on a silver platter. Sophia looked at me with a mixture of awe and something else. Admiration. This man, every time she was pushed to the brink of despair, he found some impossible way to solve everything. He was like a force of nature, sent to protect her. Ping. My phone lit up with a text message. It was from Ava Reed. It was just one sentence. Who the hell are you? I smiled and deleted the message. Who I was didn't matter. What mattered was that from now on, anyone in this city who wanted to hurt Sophia Knight would have to go through me first. Caleb's arrest sent Vance Global's stock into a nosedive. Richard Vance was too busy trying to stop the bleeding to worry about us anymore. Sophia seized the opportunity, securing the partnership deal they had stolen and pulling her company back from the brink. The atmosphere in the mansion became lighter than it had been since I'd arrived. A few days later, Zoe stormed the castle again, this time to celebrate Sophia's glorious victory. Sophia, you brilliant bitch. Come here and let me kiss you. Zoe yelled, tackling her into a hug. Sophia pushed her away. You smell like a perfume factory. Get off me. Zoe's eyes then landed on me, and a wicked grin spread across her face. Ethy Poo, we owe this all to you. Tell me, how can your big sister reward you? My body is yours for the taking, you know? She winked dramatically. I was in the kitchen slicing an apple and nearly took off a finger. Ms. Lane, please be serious. Oh, but I'm always serious, darling, she purred, slinking over to me. She plucked a strawberry from the bowl and held it to my lips. Saya. Before I could react, Sophia shot across the room, snatched the strawberry from Zoe's fingers, and popped it into her own mouth. Don't you dare flirt with my staff, she snapped, her cheeks puffed out like an angry chipmunk hoarding its nuts. The second the words were out of her mouth, she realized what she'd said. Her entire face went scarlet. The air suddenly smelled faintly of jealousy. Zoe stared for 3 full seconds, then erupted into peals of laughter. Oh my God, is our little ice queen jealous? This is the best day of my life. Shut up. Sophia, mortified, lunged at Zoe, trying to cover her mouth. The two gorgeous women dissolved into a playful wrestling match in the middle of the kitchen. I shook my head, but I couldn't stop the smile from spreading across my face. This felt normal. It felt good. That night, Zoe refused to leave and crashed in a guest room. In the dead of night, a faint noise woke me from a light sleep. I was out of bed in an instant, silently opening my door. A shadowy figure was tiptoeing down the hall, heading straight for Sophia's room. My eyes narrowed. I moved like a ghost, following close behind. The figure stopped at Sophia's door and slowly turned the knob. The door creaked open. Damn it. She'd forgotten to lock it again. Just as the intruder was about to slip inside, I shot out a hand and grabbed them by the back of their pajamas. A familiar shriek. It was Zoe. She was wearing a ridiculously flimsy lace nightgown, and I was holding her dangling in the air like a kitten. What do you think you're doing? You nearly gave me a heart attack, she gasped, clutching her chest. It's the middle of the night. What are you up to? I asked in a low voice. I was just going to chat with Sophia, she said, her eyes darting around nervously. Does chatting usually involve sneaking around in the dark? I wasn't buying it. Just then, the light in Sophia's room flicked on. She opened the door, rubbing her eyes, and froze when she saw us. What are you two doing? Seeing Sophia, Zoe immediately found her courage and started pointing at me accusingly. Sophia, You have to control your bodyguard. He was assaulting me. My jaw twitched. I let her go. Zoe stumbled forward and threw herself into Sophia's arms, launching into a tearful, dramatic retelling of her ordeal. Sophia listened to Zoe's wildly exaggerated story, glanced at my deadpan expression, and immediately understood what had happened. She sighed and rubbed her forehead. Zoe, what are you doing? What do you mean? I was testing your security. Zoe declared righteously. I wanted to see if you were locking your door at night. And look, if it weren't for me, some creep could have waltzed right in. She shot me a pointed look. Sophia's cheeks flushed pink again. She glanced at me guiltily and mumbled, I forgot. You forgot? Or did you have someone on your mind and hoped you'd get a late-night visitor? Zoe teased, nudging Sophia with her elbow. If you say one more word, I'm throwing you out. Sophia hissed, now thoroughly embarrassed. I watched them bicker, sighed, and turned to go back to my room. Stop. Sophia's voice cut through the air. I turned back. She was looking at me with a serious expression. From now on, you're moving into the room next to mine. I blinked. The room next to hers was the second best in the house, with a better view and a more secure position. I don't think that's appropriate. It's not a request, Sophia said, her tone leaving no room for argument. It's an order. I don't want you having to get up in the middle of the night to catch cat burglars because I forget to lock my door. It was a good excuse, but the pink tips of her ears betrayed her. Zoe was practically vibrating with glee, mouthing the words, "Get it, boy," at me from behind Sophia's back. And so I moved in next door. Lying in the new room, I could hear the faint sound of her shifting in bed through the wall. Just one wall between us. The thought made my own heart beat a little faster. The next day, Richard Vance's revenge came faster and harder than I'd expected. He pulled every string he had, calling in favors from every major bank in the city. They all called in their loans to Knight Industries at once and froze any new lines of credit. Overnight, the company's cash flow dried up completely. Panic ripped through the company. The stock plummeted again, and several board members started making secret calls to Richard Vance, ready to sell Sophia out. She locked herself in her office and didn't come out all day. When I finally went in, I found her sitting on the floor, her back against the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the city skyline with empty, hopeless eyes. It was the first time I had ever seen her look so broken. I'm going to lose, aren't I? Her voice was choked with tears. She looked like a lost animal, abandoned by the entire world. I walked over and knelt in front of her, taking her ice-cold hands in mine. As long as I'm here, you can't lose. My voice was quiet, but it landed like a thunderclap in the dead silence of her heart. She looked up, her eyes swimming with tears. But we have no money. The banks have cut us off. The board is turning on me. I can't hold on anymore. Who said we don't have any money? I looked her straight in the eye, my voice steady and clear. Tomorrow, you're going to hold a press conference, and you're going to tell everyone that the largest private equity firm in the world, Nemesis Capital, is investing $100 billion into Knight Industries. Sophia just stared at me, completely stunned. Nemesis? But that's a myth, a ghost firm that only operates overseas. How could they possibly? I smiled and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. Because I am Nemesis. When I said those words, I am Nemesis, the world seemed to fall away. Sophia stared at me, her beautiful eyes wide with an astonishment so profound it bordered on fear, as if I'd just told her I was from another planet. What? What did you say? She whispered, her voice trembling. I founded Nemesis Capital a few years ago overseas, I explained calmly. I never planned on bringing it into the light this soon, but it seems it's time to remind certain people who really runs this city. My tone was casual, but the raw power behind the words was like a shot of adrenaline straight to Sophia's heart. She looked at this man, this quiet, unassuming man who dressed in camo pants and flip-flops, and for the first time, she felt truly small. She, who thought she sat at the pinnacle of power in this city, was nothing compared to the man standing before her. But why would you? She wanted to ask why someone with this kind of power would ever be content to be just her bodyguard. I made a promise to your brother, I said, cutting her off, my gaze soft but unyielding. I told him I would protect you. That doesn't just mean keeping you safe from harm. It means protecting everything you care about. Sophia's tears, which she had fought so hard to hold back, finally came. But this time, they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of overwhelming relief and gratitude. She threw herself into my arms, holding on to me so tightly it felt like she was trying to merge with me. "Ethan, thank you." I held her warm, trembling body and gently stroked her back. "Silly girl," I murmured. "You never have to thank me." The next day, Knight Industries held an emergency press conference. When Sophia stood at the podium, composed and confident, and announced a $100 billion cash infusion from the mysterious Nemesis capital, the room erupted. The reporters went into a frenzy. The news was more powerful than a Category 5 hurricane hitting the financial district. When Richard Vance saw the news in his office, he swept his antique tea set off his desk in a blind rage, smashing it to pieces. "Nemesis? How can it be Nemesis? Why would they help that little bitch?" he roared, his face purple. He couldn't fathom that the very trap he'd set to destroy Sophia had instead lured out a Leviathan he stood no chance against. And at that very moment, the Leviathan himself was sitting comfortably in Sophia's executive office, peeling an apple. "Want to see a good show?" I asked, handing her a slice. She took it, her eyes still filled with a dazed sort of wonder. "What show?" I gave her a mysterious smile and made a call. "It's time." Less than 10 minutes after I hung up, Richard Vance's secretary burst into his office, pale and sweating. "Mr. Vance, it's bad. The IRS, the SEC, the fire marshal. Every regulatory agency in the city is here. They say they're conducting a multi-agency surprise inspection." "What?" Vance shot to his feet. Before he could react, his office door was kicked open. Captain Ava Reed strode in, flanked by a squad of officers, her face like stone. She held up a stack of warrants. "Richard Vance, you're under arrest for multiple counts of bribery, tax evasion, and market manipulation." Richard Vance's legs gave out from under him, and he collapsed into his chair. He knew it was over. The Vance empire was finished. From her window high above the city, Sophia watched the disgrazo being led away in handcuffs. She looked over at me, leaning against her desk as if nothing had happened, and her heart swelled with 1,000 different emotions. One man, one day, one phone call. He had brought the untouchable Vance dynasty to its knees. My phone buzzed. It was Ava. "We got him. I owe you one," the text read, "but I still have to ask. Who the hell are you?" I smiled, deleted the message, and wrapped an arm around Sophia's waist, pulling her close. "Come on," I said softly. "The show's over. Let's go home." Sophia leaned against me, feeling the warmth and strength flowing from my body, and for the first time in a long time, her heart was completely at peace. Home. The word had never sounded so warm.